All right. 7:32, 7:27, 79 degrees in the office. Doesn't run too much cooling on the weekend anyway. Let's see where we are this week. It's a hot week. It's very hot and humid outside in Geneva. About, I don't know, 86 with about 100% relative humidity because we just got some rain. And we're moving quickly into the 6th to 8th cover. We're really worrying about foliar summer diseases and full-on summer diseases that we have coming up. Some of the summer fruit rots, moving into that 9th cover pre-harvest period with rapid speed. And what do we tend to recommend at this time? It is very hot and very dry. Yes, it did rain a considerable amount, but it all vaporized into a humid cloud, and it's leaving the trees. There's not a lot of leaf wetness on the trees, even though it rained pretty much most of the night into the morning. I'm thinking it's not too much cause for concern. We're going to look at some weather forecasts in a little bit and see if the summer disease models and apple scab models tell us if it's worthwhile spraying. Right now, are we needing a single-site fungicide? I would say no. That's why I've graded out. Save these Flynn Extras, Miravis, Sevia, and Axios. If you have the worst apple blotch Marsanina problem, fine. Maybe you could put one more in. At this stage, we're hitting to the end of when I would recommend them for the summer foliar diseases. Hopefully, you've already used them. Right now, if you feel like you haven't done anything in a while, Captan phosphorus acid. If you have anything that could resemble Phytophthora, because of a low-lying area, flooded. Can't imagine anyone's got any flooded orchards at this particular point in the summer. But sometimes the scion of certain varieties, like topaz, can be very sensitive to Phytophthora root rots, and they can actually get on wet grass and jump into the scion and rot that while the rootstock looks great. We'll look at that in a couple of weeks. Hopefully no one has that. I think in this type of weather, try out your biologicals. I always like the liquids, Stargust EcoSwings, Double Nickel LCs, Oso, Howler. Howler's not a liquid, but it's a fairly potent one as well. If you're going on full organic, maybe 14 days in this kind of weather where we don't have any rain whatsoever. We'll look at some of my plots, maybe a couple weeks, and you can see what level of success I've had with various types of programs like Mancozeb Free and other stuff like that as well. They're looking pretty good, all things considered. We had a lot of apple scab infection periods early on. It really depends on the variety. If you have Macintosh, yeah, I'd go organic 7 days. Something else, probably could really stretch that out, particularly now. If it rains a lot, I don't think it will. Oso and Polyloxin D are good. Less than, I just stick one of these liquid biologicals. Use them. They're kind of expensive, so if we're not needing to apply a lot, that's great because of the heat. I think we're starting to accumulate a little bit of leaf wetness. We'll look at that momentarily. What are we managing in the end? We're leaving the area where we have to worry about the summer foliar diseases. The glomerella leaf spot, which I haven't truly seen a true glomerella leaf spot in New York. If it's going to show up, it'll be Hudson Valley, closer to the lower part of the state into Pennsylvania. Even I don't think Cary has it. I think Cary mostly has the apple blotch Marsanina. Got that as well. Frog eye leaf spots are showing up. Seen them a little bit. Theory, you could get an alternaria leaf spot and fruit rot. Haven't seen it that much. There's a lot of excitement and concern about alternaria, but no one's sending me pictures of the disease. So maybe it's not as prevalent as we thought. Last year we had some necrotic leaf blotch. We could move into a situation where this shows up again. Talk about how that occurs because we have a lot of hot weather this week and the temperature is going to drop drastically towards the end of the week, and that can be a factor in how this can show up. Typically we take these things out with the apple scab programs. We're trying to position these. They're a little bit later after scab tends to be over, and we'll talk about when to use them. They can be incredibly problematic in organic, or if you just rely on Captan Mancozeb the whole time. Really need some of those single sites to kind of take some of these things down. A lot more frog eye leaf spot this year. Took some pictures. Unfortunately, they were out of focus. But we got some others from people around in the region. You'll start to see the spots themselves, small, circular, concentric rings, darker on the outside, pale in the middle. I suppose at some point someone thought these types of spots look like a frog's eye. Kind of concentric, dark on the outside, pale in the middle. Maybe the pale iris is what they were thinking of the frog's eye. Can be quite sort of stark and easy to see, caused by Botchersphaeria, something that also causes a fruit rot. they kind of survive and sporulate on cankers and in the thinning mummies. You may see these more frequently on, especially this year, on trees that persist with a thinning mummy. I took a bunch of pictures where the mummy's right in front of the leaf and the spots are behind it, but unfortunately both were out of focus. We'll just focus on these old ones. We've had a pretty severe early wet summer, and this is probably why we're starting to see these things now. The leaf spots seem to be slowing down. I'm seeing a little bit more apple blotch and programs that didn't have good fungicide timing just starting to show up now. And speaking of that, all of these things can show up at the same time. You might get a little bit of frog eye, which you can really see here, that dark outer rim, and then that pale white iris of the frog's eye in the center. And this could be blended in a little bit with apple blotch marcinina. Janet took some photos of these last summer, and we were trying to parse through it. It has that ink blotchiness of the marcinina and those very distinct frog eye spots right there. You can even see thinning mummies sometimes in the background. This is where a lot of the inoculum comes to this. But as we're moving into the apple blotch, marcinina, leaf blight, leaf blotch itself, these things will start to defoliate, and defoliation can come if it gets very severe in early September. Do I think it's going to happen this year? It's hard to really tell. I'm looking at my Jonah Golds really defoliate quickly. My Empires are fine. And I haven't seen that much defoliation yet, but we're starting to see some on the ground. It's going to have that ink blotchiness, and the rest of the leaf will go yellow and chlorotic. And depending on what type of cultivar you get, I've been picking up different leaves with apple blotch on them. And you can see that they can be a little bit different, but they all have that blotchy irregularness, and they have little tiny pepper-like fruiting bodies inside the very dark portions of the lesion. If it's really bad, and there's a lot of apple blotch towards harvest, you might, as the fruit mature, you can start to get some spots on the fruit, and they look quite unsightly. Now, what about necrotic leaf blotch? We saw some of this last year. Janet took some good photos of it. We're pretty certain this is what it is. We've talked a lot with my colleagues in the South who are deep into the glomerella world and some of these other things, and looking at pictures from what Keith Yoder had posted and other things like that. These large, irregular necrotic lesions, the leaf becomes chlorotic. They're very ringed. It's like a massive, irregularly shaped frog eye, I guess you might say. A lot of concentric circles, no little tiny fruiting bodies in it, which means there's not a fungus in there that's doing it. This can have rapid onset mid-season to now. 12 to 24 hours. If all of a sudden you see this happen, and then 4 to 7 days from like next Friday, you can think, oh goodness, we had this show up because of all the really, really hot weather, and it really cooled down to those 79 as the high and 68 as the low, or 53 or something. So this really shows up when you have a cool rainy period preceded by hot sunny days. We have hot sunny days this week. We'll have a cool rainy period at the end of the week as well. It's mostly been reported on Golden Delicious. That's typically where it will show up in Golden Parents. I'll go look at my own Golden Deliciouses and see how they look. But we're starting to see it in others. If you're into the gibberellins, and you use some of these, it can be made worse by these. How do you get rid of it? EBDCs after petal fall. Sometimes we might not have seen this in our Golden Delicious because we had Xyram in our summer programs. And it caused me to wonder, are we seeing the impact of it? Depends on how big these hot, cold swings are going to be and to what it would look like. Do you have glomerella leaf spot? Let's talk a little bit about this one. All these pictures come out of North Carolina State, where glomerella leaf spot is king, and its defoliation can be even way more severe than the stuff we're seeing in apple blotch. Clean looking tree goes quickly to this by the towards the end of the summer in North Carolina. And in this case, it'll almost look a little bit like the necrotic leaf blotch. No chlorosis at first, little tiny small purple lesions. Then they'll enlarge to large concentric rings where you really see that nice ringing like a tree that you've just cut down. You're looking at all the rings. You might think, oh, a little frog eye. It will look like that, but they will expand over time and then become kind of regular shaped and become quite chlorotic in the end. We haven't seen too many look like this. Some of those necrotic leaf blotch pictures look like that a lot. You don't see the little fruiting bodies in it, causing us to be a little concerned about the necrotic leaf blotch that we saw previously. In that case, I sat down with Sarah and we looked at all the pictures, and she was thinking you really got to have those concentric rings before you really start thinking glomerella leaf spot. Another really nice picture of the advanced stages where it turns yellow and then falls on the floor. And a lot of these things can be confused with one another. How do we beat them all? Well, you got to get these susceptible varieties in. Single site fungicide, Sevia, Inspire Super, Aprovia, Flint Extra, Maravon, all the fancy materials, they really become important in sort of knocking these things out in the early covers after the scab is over. First to second. That's why I'm always asking and suggesting that we save these fancy materials into about first and second. You need another one about third and fourth. And then if you can squeeze in 3 of these single site types of materials after petal fall and before fifth cover, that seems to be the cutoff point. Once you've hit fifth cover, it doesn't seem to be helpful. We've had 2 years of study looking at timing of these in relation to apple blotch, and where we keep them early on, keep them in the middle, and then keep them really late. And we'll have that second year of data we can share at the Winter Fruit School meetings if people are interested in apple blotch. Our Jonah Golds get a ton of that stuff. Biologicals, I really don't know if they're going to be that helpful. Captan doesn't seem to be very helpful. I think those zinc EBDCs are very helpful, but if those go away, we can have trouble. As I mentioned before, my empires get almost little to none. I think if we begin to look around the state, you can see which ones tend to get this type of problem. I've seen a good bit in my, most of the other varieties I see a little bit. Gala doesn't seem to be as bad. Empire and Max don't seem to have it. All my Cortlands don't seem to have it. Like anything's with golden parents seem to have a little bit more. I don't know if I've seen it that much. Honeycrisp, my Evercrisps can get it pretty intense. A lot of different ones. I really haven't really sat down and looked at how bad it can be. And from that, let's move on to fruit. Yep, we just talked about glomerular leaf spot. This is what it will do on fruit. You might think, oh, it looks like a little bit of a herbicide injury, a little tiny brown spot. Might start around a lenticel, and they can enlarge a little bit and look a little much more like what I was showing for apple blotch. But then over time, they can become quite big and almost look like a bitter rot. It doesn't have all the little fruiting bodies in it. What is bitter rot and how does it compare? Yep, bitter rot Colototricum species. The species do vary in sensitivity to fungicides. We've sent a couple off to some of my colleagues in Maryland, and they come back, and they seem, as reported, they do seem to vary a little bit on how they respond to fungicides. And see, they'll survive in cankers, on thinning mummies, just like the Botrysphaeria things that are causing frog eye, and can be really bad in wet summers near harvest or on really sugary cultivars. Some of the more extreme apples you see now are my sugariest ones. Actually be on, I don't know which one that is. Could be on a Snapdragon or something like that. Honeycrisps, Jonah Golds, anything that's very sweet. If you don't really take care of these, they'll get away from you. Sunken soft rots, kind of soft. In the mature fruit, as you can see, are sporulating readily. All these little tiny bumps and this salmon color stuff is just billions and billions of spores that with the next rain are going to splash around and rot the next fruit. Black rot, Botrysphaeria, leaves. This is the frog eye leaf spot pathogen. So it'll cause little tiny circular spots with concentric rings in the pale spots in the middle. They'll survive and sporulate in cankers and thinning mummies. You can see right here, there's a thinning mummy right next to the fruit, and it is rotting. A lot of mummies around the king bloom where this fruit developed and then developed into a gross black rot type fruit. It's not very soft. There's another one called white rot that's very soft, just a different species of Botrysphaeria. Sometimes the black rot will be pretty hard. Won't have as many fruiting bodies. There can be a couple pycnidia in there making spores, but they're not going to be as sunken for the most part. Really severe in wet summers near harvest, sugary cultivars, no shocks there. And they tend to be intact. If they're really soft and smushy, there's a different species of Botrysphaeria involved. And don't tend to be as sunken as the bitter rot. What else can we struggle with? Fly speck sooty blotch. Fly speck is caused by one species of fungus. It makes these little tiny, shiny black spots like about the size of pepper grains. And the sooty blotch complex is a series of fungi that put these little splotches or blotches of kind of looks like soot on an apple. If you have pears, you can think about the pearcella and all of the sort of sooty molds that are all over the leaves. These are the same type of fungi. They're just able to put these on the cuticle of the apple. If it's about, if the blotch is about more than a quarter of an inch, you can't really rub it off. Not in a processing brush, but you can rub them off by hand. They're pretty easy. They need to be about under the size of a pencil eraser, about a quarter of an inch. And they survive in weedy inoculum, understory plants, woodlots like wild blackberry. Wild blackberry is a great way to get a fly speck sooty blotch trial, so whatever you do, get that out of your orchards and away from the edges of your orchards. Now this one, I haven't seen it as much in the last coming years. It really likes 65 degrees Fahrenheit, and infection stops completely at 85. So you're thinking right now, is the fly speck sooty blotch infecting my apples? Probably not. We haven't seen a lot of it in the last 2 years in Geneva, mainly because we've had these really, really hot summers. Hot and dry at harvest, really rare. If it starts to get cool, rainy spring at Paddle Fall, we did have some of this, and late summer rains. And then with the cool temperatures, it can be very severe. But our temperatures have not been cool. Really hot. Out of grade. Fruit, they don't really impact the fruit quality. I mean, I guess they could if they got very severe, like in some of these gross shots that we have there, especially on the yellow fleshed apples. You can see it more than on the dark red flesh. No impact on fruit quality. It's really all in the cuticle area. You can't rub off the fly speck, but you can rub off a little bit of the sooty blotch on the packing line. The other thing I've seen a good bit this summer, because we're having a hot, dry season, is sunburn. Makes these kind of white areas that look like you hit it with a herbicide, and then it forms a scab-like lesion like you used to get when you'd fall off your bike, riding your bike as a kid. Yeah, looks, and it's kind of hard and burnt, just like someone torched it. How does it happen? It's a combination of tree training, problems and summer pruning that end up exposing the fruit to too much direct sunlight. You want light on your fruit so they'll color up, but you don't want them to be constantly getting bombarded with a lot of direct sunlight. It might look first like herbicide injury, and the lesion center will turn black and crispy like a scab. I mean, it kind of feels like a burnt apple peel if you touch it. How do you know it's this and not some kind of herbicide injury? If you see fallen fruit in the herbicide strip and they're facing upward and they have the same lesions on it, you're like, oh, that's sunburn. Yeah, typically what you can do is look for along the fruit on the ground. If you're rolling over a fruit on the ground that's on the bottom side that burnt scab is on, then you think, wait a minute, either someone kicked it or it's not sunburn. Interestingly enough, I've seen a lot of sunburned fruit, and it doesn't often get colonized by the other fruit rots. I mean, eventually it probably will, but not in many instances. What else do we got here? Moldy core. This one's a pretty gross one that shows up post-harvest. We're really moving towards the very end. Fungal colonization of the seed. Latent infections from early bloom to fruit development. This will happen right around petal fall. It's particularly gross. It's not a health concern no matter what the person buying your apples says. However, the person buying the apples from you is the one who gets to make the call on whether or not it's a health concern or not. It doesn't harm you. It's just disgusting. And it can be things like alternaria, which we've heard a little bit more about this season, Botrysphaeria, it's out and about, Cladosporium, which is kind of like apple scab a little bit, and Penicillium, a classic fruit rot. Yep, the infections will only really show up after harvest, and they're usually confined around the core, around the seed coats as well, and it can really lead to load rejections. The only other one to look out for in this case is the callus core, undifferentiated white callus tissue around seed cavities. It's kind of crystalline hard, not soft like fungal mycelium. I can definitely pick this out under a microscope. It's not a health concern, absolutely not. It has no off flavor, and it's just a physiological problem that is mistaken for moldy core in certain varieties, such as in this Fuji. It's usually due to an influx of water at just the wrong time, and it makes a little bit extra callus tissue. It's not a big deal. And with that, I think we'll switch over and look and see if we need to apply materials or when the last time we were. And we're going to look a little bit at the NUA fly speck sooty blotch model. We're going to look at the scab model. We're going to see what it talks about. At this point, the onset of the fly speck epidemic is over. And we're not really looking at it for fly speck. It's pretty much too dry and hot for this. But we will look at it to see about other summer disease applications. Is it time? How does it work? So let's move this away. And then let's bring up this right here and take a look at it. I'm in Appleton, New York, 7/27. Looking around whether or not this week is needing anything. We're just going to assume that maybe the last application happened on the 13th, about 14 days ago. Right now, scab is showing a lot of leaf wetness hours, probably the humidity from the recent rains, and a little bit, we're getting sprinklings of thunderstorms here and there. For the most part, if you even looked at a general ascomycete model like for apple scab, is there enough leaf wetness to really get these things going? They say no. Popping over to the fly spec city block model, assuming an application of 713. And it really is not going to trigger too much until you get to about an inch of rain since the last application. So not much. So we were thinking biologicals, try them out. Now's the time you're probably safe. I'm going to pop over to Williamson, see what that looks like. We're going to assume the same 713, looking good. Even less rain. Now, if we take a look at the scab model in Williamson, and checking out that same area, it looks like we had a lot of rain the last 3 days. Only they will really know. A lot of leaf wetness, not a lot of rain. About not even a tenth of an inch of rain. This stuff was really pouring around, but there has been some leaf wetness. That might get you a little bit anxious about doing something, but I don't think it's cause for alarm in this particular weather. Let's move into the Finger Lakes. Interlaken, let's take a peek at that. What does it say from the scab? It says there's a little bit of something happening now, but not a lot of rain amount, and it's a very light one. That sort of triggers into my biological. We'll check the other fly spec city blotch model, and same thing. It's like just haven't had enough rain to really do it. Do we want to never spray? No, we don't want to do that, but we want to keep on about a 14 to 21 day in this really super dry, hot weather, just to keep down any inoculum that might be flying. Let's move into Voorheesville, see how they look. Assuming they applied on 713. If you applied later than 713, you can see the model will change drastically. It's now saying, yeah, okay, if you didn't apply anything since the 6th of July, which is quite a long time ago, you need to do something as of today with all this big rain. But we're not going to assume that. We're going to go back to the 13th. Assume people have been on it. What does Scab say in Voorheesville? Checking it out. Not much. A lot of leaf wetness. 1 big inch of rain dumped right on today, but it's going to heat right back up and cook that off. I don't think the leaf wetness is going to stay around a lot. They say there's an infection event. I would just stick to the biologicals or something really soft this week. Going up to Peru. What does it look like up there? All right. Let's see how this one looks. Same situation as Voorheesville. Yeah, you got a big spike, maybe a 1/4 of an inch of rain, depending on where you were in Peru or Chazy, could be a little different. Go to this fly spec city blotch model. We'll put in Chazy, New York, see how that looks. Assuming you applied something on the 13th, you're looking quite good. A dump of rain about 1/2 inch. So if you had some Captan residues, it's becoming 2 weeks and a good bit of wear off. So I think you would be best served by maybe going for a biological or something light, or if you're doing the Captan phos acid at the 2.5 pounds of 80 with a low rate of the phos acid, then you can put that on again. I don't know if I'd lose sleep over it. I'm going to go into the Hudson Valley lab, and I'm trying to remember my site. Chelsea will cut this out for me. Oh boy. Let's just say, well, I can't remember all my Hudson Valley sites. I'll go to Highland for a moment. So my brain corrects itself. Well, 7 1/8 of an inch. If you applied something at the Hudson Valley lab a while ago, you should be in good shape. I'm going to go Campbell Hall. That's it. And you get as old as I am, your brain just quits working. Let's see. No. Campbell Hall says if you applied on the 713, you're in the cautionary zone. Probably 1.8 inches of rain since the last fungus. I think it could probably stand to do something. A little Captan phos acid or Oso howler to keep things clean. And then Long Island, they're approaching into the harvest area. You're almost time for your final application, depending on how close you are to harvest. We're going to go to Riverhead. And we'll see what it looks like there. About 1/4 of an 1/8 inch of rain. Go to Riverhead. We'll go do Campbell Hall for scab. What does it say for that? Just another spattering of third of an inch of rain. Nothing too much to worry about. Something to maybe clean up and get yourself into the next 2 weeks. It really depends on when you applied. If you applied much earlier than if you applied like last week, then definitely do not need to be stressing about this anywhere. You got another week or so before you really have to worry, even with this big spike of rain. All right, that's enough for today. I'll be out at the Lake Ontario Fruit Team's summer tour on Thursday. I'll talk about some of these things again and a couple others as well. All right, see ya.